Carlos Alcaraz dropped into his chair at the press conference like a guy who just found out his favorite meal had been replaced with a plate of steaming hot bullshit. His young face, usually brimming with confidence, now flickered between frustration and pure defiance. The room was packed with journalists, eyes gleaming with anticipation, waiting for the rising tennis star to spill the tea on the latest controversy rocking the sport. Tennis has always been a game of tradition, class, and, let's be honest, some shady-ass backstage politics. But this time, the drama wasn't just another locker room whisper. This time, it was personal. The whole mess revolved around Alexander Zverev's sudden withdrawal from a recent tournament. Injuries? Personal reasons? Sure, that's part of the game. But the way this particular situation unfolded smelled fishier than a 3-day-old tuna sandwich. And right in the middle of it all? None other than Novak Djokovic. The puppet master, the man who always seemed to have a hand in things when things got murky. Whispers had reached Alcaraz's ears, rumors of Djokovic pulling strings behind the scenes, and if there's one thing Carlos doesn't do, it's stay quiet when something stinks to high heaven. The microphones were live, cameras flashing like a goddamn lightning storm, and with a look that screamed I'm about to drop a bomb, Alcaraz leaned in and spoke. His tone was measured, but there was a blade hidden in every word. I've always respected this sport and its rules. Tennis is supposed to be about fairness, about merit, about winning because you're the best, not because someone's pulling fucking favors behind the curtain. The reporters pounced with questions, but Carlos raised a hand like a teacher about to shut down a classroom full of rowdy kids. Let me finish. This isn't just about Zverev pulling out. It's about a pattern. A pattern where certain players seem to have an unfair amount of influence over tournament decisions. And yes, I'm talking about Novak Djokovic. Boom. You could feel the shockwave rip through the room. If the air had been tense before, now it was nuclear. Djokovic, a titan of the sport, worshipped and despised in equal measure. His record was untouchable, but his off-court moves had always been a magnet for controversy. And now, this young Spanish prodigy was calling him out, with no filter, no sugarcoating. But Carlos wasn't done. Oh no, he was just warming up. Look at when Zverev withdrew. It doesn't make sense. Zverev is a fighter. I've played him. We all know how much he loves to compete, even when he's physically messed up. So why now? Why this sudden withdrawal right before a match that could completely shake up the tournament? He let the weight of his words settle, let it sink in before going for the jugular. I have reason to believe that conversations took place behind closed doors. Conversations that influenced Zverev's decision. And those conversations involved Djokovic. The room went silent as death. You could hear the furious scribbling of pens, journalists knowing they were witnessing a headline for the ages. Alcaraz leaned forward, voice dropping to almost a whisper. Tennis is supposed to be about integrity, about letting the best player win, not about manipulating rules or pressuring players into decisions that benefit a select few. And just like that, the tennis world fucking exploded. Headlines tore through the internet like wildfire. Fans and analysts split into two camps. On one side, those who hailed Alcaraz as a fearless truth-teller, a guy with balls of steel calling out the bullshit nobody dared to talk about. On the other, Djokovic's loyalists, who saw this as disrespect, as baseless slander against a living legend. Djokovic, ever the composed enigma, responded in his usual calm, collected way at a separate press conference. His signature smirk was intact, the same one he wore before dismantling opponents on the court. I respect Carlos as a player and as a person, he said, but these accusations are completely unfounded. I had nothing to do with Zverev's withdrawal, and it's disappointing to see such claims being made without evidence. The back and forth between the two players ignited a full-blown war within the sport. On one side, the old-school purists, standing firmly behind Djokovic, convinced he was a misunderstood genius being unfairly targeted. On the other, the younger generation, rallying behind Alcaraz, seeing him as the fearless new voice ready to tear down the old, corrupt system. And the best part? Alcaraz wasn't backing down. In the days that followed, he doubled down, giving interviews where he refused to walk back his words. He pointed out patterns he had observed for years, calling out a system he believed was rotten to the core. The war had begun. And in a sport that prides itself on elegance and sportsmanship, Carlos Alcaraz had just launched a nuclear fucking bomb that would shake the entire tennis world to its core. "This ain't a one-time thing," Alcaraz stated in an interview, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen way too much bullshit unfold behind the pristine white lines of a tennis court. He wasn't just throwing shade at Djokovic, though, let's be real, Joker was the poster boy for this kind of mess. No, Carlos was talking about an entire fucking culture within tennis, a system where certain players, especially those with enough clout to bend reality to their liking, could twist the rules to conveniently suit them. And the receipts? Oh, he had plenty. Alcaraz pointed out that Djokovic had allegedly influenced tournament scheduling more than once, with matches magically shifting around to align perfectly with his recovery needs. Anyone paying close attention had seen it happen. Matches rescheduled, conditions altered, all subtle, but there if you looked close enough. Meanwhile, Zverev, finally breaking his silence, released a statement so polished it could have been written by a PR robot. "My withdrawal was due to personal reasons," he declared, "and I made the decision independently. Any speculation to the contrary is false and unfair to all involved." Yeah, sure. The problem? The damage was already fucking done. Once a story like this picks up steam, it stops belonging to reality and takes on a life of its own. It wasn't just Alcaraz versus Djokovic anymore. It was tradition versus rebellion, old school versus new school, power versus integrity. The ATP, now caught in the middle of a shitstorm, faced mounting pressure to address the situation. Player meetings got heated, with Carlos leading the charge. "We need accountability," he declared, standing firm in front of his peers. "No more closed-door decisions. No more favoritism. If we want tennis to mean something, if we want it to stay credible, we need to act now." Djokovic, seated across from him in that same meeting, didn't flinch. Unshaken. Cool as a damn cucumber. "Unfounded accusations are dangerous," he responded smoothly, scanning the room with the calm demeanor of a guy who'd seen it all before. "I've dedicated my life to this sport and have always played within the rules. If there are issues, let's address them constructively, not through baseless claims." The tension was fucking palpable. And then came the charity event. The one both players were scheduled to attend. Organizers scrambled to keep them apart, desperately hoping to avoid a public shitshow, but let's be honest, it was inevitable. When they finally crossed paths, the atmosphere was electric. Cameras fucking loved it. The moment was captured in crystal clarity. The brief handshake, stiff as a corpse in the morgue, forced smiles that looked more like they were gritting their teeth than expressing any real warmth. And as the controversy refused to die down, social media did what social media does best. Took sides and went to war. Hashtags like #Team Alcaraz and #Team Djokovic started trending worldwide. Sports pundits weighed in, with some warning that if the ATP didn't get its shit together, the very reputation of tennis was at risk. Alcaraz? He doubled the fuck down. He called for independent investigations into tournament practices, demanded that decision-making processes be overhauled, and took to social media with a post that hit right in the feels. "This isn't about me. This isn't even about Djokovic. This is about the future of tennis. We owe it to the fans. We owe it to the players. We owe it to the sport itself to ensure fairness and integrity." Djokovic, on the other hand, treated the entire ordeal like just another chapter in his long-ass book of controversies. Used to the scrutiny, he took the moment to reflect on his legacy. "History will judge us all," he mused in an interview. "I can only control what I do, on and off the court. I hope to be remembered for my contributions to tennis, not for controversies like this." But by this point, the game had changed. The rivalry between Alcaraz and Djokovic was no longer just about tennis. Their matches weren't just about who had the better backhand, sharper serve, or deadlier drop shot. It was bigger than that. It had morphed into a philosophical war, an ideological battle between two forces pulling the sport in opposite directions. And for the fans, it was prime fucking entertainment. A generational clash. A revolution against the old guard. And while the true reason behind Zverev's withdrawal remained murky as hell, one thing was crystal clear. Carlos Alcaraz had cemented himself not just as a force to be reckoned with on the court, but as a voice that couldn't be ignored in a sport drowning in tradition. Whether his bold stance would actually lead to reform or just further tear tennis apart, only time would tell. But one thing was certain. He wasn't backing the fuck down. Alcaraz's team was divided as hell over his decision to take this fight public. His coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, wasn't exactly thrilled about it. In fact, he practically begged him to tread carefully, warning him that going after someone as entrenched as Djokovic could blow up in his damn face. "You're walking into dangerous territory, Carlos," Ferrero cautioned during a private training session, wiping sweat off his forehead as if physically trying to shake off the headache this whole drama was causing him. Djokovic isn't just some guy. He's a fucking institution. He's got a legacy, a network, and the ear of the most powerful people in the sport. If you poke the bear, you better be ready for the bite. But Carlos? He wasn't backing down. "If I don't say something now, then who the hell will?" he shot back, fire in his eyes. "This isn't just about me. It's about all the players who don't have the platform to speak up. The guys who get steamrolled by decisions they have no say in." Ferrero sighed, recognizing that look. The same relentless passion that made Alcaraz an unstoppable force on the court was now driving him straight into the biggest fight of his career. One that couldn't be won with forehands and drop shots. And while Ferrero admired his guts, he couldn't shake the feeling that this battle might drain him, mentally and physically. Meanwhile, Alcaraz started piecing together a timeline of shady-ass incidents, a pattern of favoritism that, in his eyes, was as clear as day. One memory stood out, a tournament where rain delays had thrown the schedule into chaos. Players had been forced to wait, uncertainty hanging in the air, until Djokovic made his concerns very fucking clear about playing on a damp court. And, surprise surprise, matches got miraculously rescheduled in a way that conveniently suited him. "It's like his opinion holds more weight than everyone else's combined," Alcaraz vented in a private meeting with fellow players. "How the fuck is that fair?" One player, choosing to stay anonymous, because nobody wanted to be the next one thrown into this goddamn firestorm, nodded silently. "It's not just Djokovic," the player admitted after a long pause. "It's the system. Influence gets rewarded over merit. You're brave for speaking out, but don't expect people to stand by you publicly. The politics run deep." Carlos wasn't just pissed at the players, though. His frustration extended to the media circus, a machine he believed was just as guilty in protecting certain stars from scrutiny. "When Novak speaks, it's a fucking headline," he told a journalist off the record. "The rest of us? We barely make it into the goddamn footnotes." The narrative is controlled, and somehow, it always benefits the same damn people. But just as it seemed like he was completely alone in his crusade, an unexpected ally emerged from the shadows, an unlikely figure who had once been a thorn in tennis's side himself. A retired tennis star, now a TV analyst and longtime critic of the establishment, dropped a bomb in a live interview. "Carlos is saying what a lot of us thought but never had the balls to say," the former player declared. "Tennis has a transparency problem, and it's about damn time someone tackled it. He may be young, but he's got wisdom beyond his years." This public backing was a huge fucking deal, a moral boost for Alcaraz, sure, but it also poured gasoline on an already raging fire. The backlash from Team Djokovic kicked into overdrive. Social media exploded into a battleground, with fans dissecting every word Carlos had ever said. Some called him a fearless rebel, while others painted him as an ungrateful, arrogant punk trying to tear down a legend's legacy. Memes flooded Twitter and Instagram. One half had him standing in a revolutionary pose, the leader of a movement. The other half, they made him look like a jealous crybaby throwing a tantrum. Djokovic's camp? They worked overtime to steer the conversation. His PR team dropped a carefully worded statement, emphasizing his commitment to fairness and integrity. Novak has always been a champion for players' rights and the purity of the game, the statement read. It's unfortunate that recent comments have led to division instead of progress. Carlos read the statement, unimpressed. They're not addressing the issue, he said bluntly in an interview. They're just spinning the story, making it about feelings instead of fucking facts. Where's the accountability? But behind closed doors, Carlos was struggling. He'd always been a private guy, focused on his game, his training, his family. Now, he was at the center of a shitstorm. Every move he made was picked apart and criticized. Late at night, he found himself scrolling through thousands of social media comments, a chaotic mix of support and brutal fucking hate. Some messages kept him going. Keep fighting, Carlos. You're standing up for something real. Others? Not so much. You're just a pawn for people who want to ruin Djokovic. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he admitted to a close friend, I didn't realize how fucking lonely this would feel. But even in his darkest moments, he refused to back down. In the following days, he doubled the fuck down on his demands for reform. He started reaching out to players, both active and retired, hoping to build a coalition that could actually push for changes in the way the sport was governed. This isn't about Novak, he emphasized in a private group chat with players. This is about making sure no one, no matter how big they are, can bend the rules in their favor. Responses? Mixed as hell. Some players voiced quiet support but hesitated to publicly back him. Others dismissed his concerns outright. One veteran messaged him directly, Kid, you'll learn that the game has always been like this. You can't change it overnight. But Alcaraz? He wasn't fucking intimidated. Maybe we can't change it overnight, he replied. But we sure as hell have to start somewhere.